Hey guys, Josh from the Ancient History Guy here. Hello and welcome to all. I hope you are having a fantastic day. Anyways, today we're going to be diving into a bit of prehistory, specifically the reasons as to why humans abandoned their hunter-gatherer lifestyles in favour of a more settled one. So without any more delay, let's get into it. So to give you guys some context, for a majority of the human's existence, we have lived a hunter-gatherer lifestyle. Often we have moved from place to place, following the giant game animals such as mammoth and bison along the migratory routes. This was largely the result of a widespread ice age, which encompassed much of the northern hemisphere. The winters of this time period were particularly harsh, with many animals adapting to the cold with thick woolly coats. Humans hunted these animals not just for food, but also for their hides. The most important of their prey were that of the mammoths, who both provided a large amount of meat, hides, and also construction tools, with the tusks of the animals making perfect makeshift shelters in the spring-summertime. Needless to say, the humans of this time, despite the horrendous conditions, actually enjoyed a fairly nutritious and healthy lifestyle. They were noticeably a lot tougher and fitter than modern-day humans. It was also a time of great cultural development. Art seems to have been an extremely important part of life, with many sculptures and crude cave paintings coming from this era. It's also a time of great technological development, as humans began to make various tools for a variety of purposes. These tools were usually made out of crude materials, such as stone and wood. Stones are especially useful, being hard enough but also pliable enough to shape into various tools and weapons. Noticeably, flint could be sharpened to make arrowheads and spears. However, you also need another harder stone in order to chip these stones into a more desired shape. This all seemed to change a few centuries after the end of the Ice Age. This was a gradual process, i.e. it did not just go from really cold to really warm, it just gradually stayed warmer for longer. This meant animals and humans could stay in one place longer than usual. As a result, the cultures that had already begun developing during the Ice Age began to develop even further, with some even developing a sense of community and religion among their tribes. As these tribes gradually dispersed throughout the area, their culture would occasionally bring them all together for religious reasons. Needless to say, the best way to find the gods was to get absolutely plastered. Chief among these various concoctions was alcohol, which the gatherers would make by, funnily enough, gathering already fermented granaries. This was a very time-consuming affair, often taking weeks to gather up enough fermented grains and then even longer to make the alcohol. Needless to say, with the cooling climates, people, along with animals, began to see less of a need to actually migrate. Along the riverbanks, the land was fertile, relatively cool, and quite abundant in life, so why bother moving away from it? Being in one place now meant they could in theory gather all of the grains they wanted to make their own alcohol, something that had once been reserved for religious reasons. Of course, this had been an extremely arduous affair, as first you had to go out and collect grains that had already fermented, which could be spread over an extremely large area. This all changed around 10,000-ish years ago, when someone had the bright idea of, well, just growing your own grains in a concentrated area. This required a huge amount of labour and thinking. First, you had to find which plants were easily farmable, so that basically limited the humans to peas, lentils, and most important of all, barley, as you can make beer from it. Then you had to locate yourself near a water source so you could, A, hydrate yourself as you're likely going to be working on this project for a while, and B, hydrate the plants. Then you had to pick an area that was both rich in nutrients and minerals, so again, bioriver will do nicely, as all the nutrients naturally flow downstream and into embankments. Gradually, after some trial and error, and also a great deal of selective breeding of crops, humans began to produce some fairly large quantities of food, and most importantly, a ton of beer. This largely started around the fertile rivers of the Euphrates and Tigris, which at the time were relatively mild in climate compared to the rest of the world, which was either way too cold or way too warm. Growing food meant humans could in theory stay in one place whilst also supporting larger populations. Larger populations mean A, more workers, and B, more people to help defend your little settlement from outside threats such as lions, tigers, half-blind hairy rhinos, the usual. Gradually, after enough failed attempts at eating the humans, animals of prey would get the idea and gradually began to avoid these small clusters, keeping both them and the humans away from harm in the process. Around 2000-ish years later, someone else had a realization. They were now making enough food to not only support themselves, but also quite a large amount of wildlife. One can only imagine the scene, a poor Stone Age farmer putting in so much work to grow his barley, only to wake up one day to find a herd of wild cattle all eating it. However, this may also have been a silver lining. Someone, somewhere in between the Tigris and Euphrates, must have come to the realization that if they could contain the large game animals and keep them alive off the produce, then they wouldn't need to go out of the relative safety of the community in order to hunt. People began to encourage the more friendly animals into smaller pastures, raising them and defending them, and then ultimately eating them. Cows and goats were obviously preferred, mainly as cattle in particular are just produce machines, able to produce meat, hides, milk, leather, and horn, all of which can be made into a variety of stuff. Needless to say, the need for actually, travelling around the world following migrating animals was gone, as the animals and plants were all here in one place and under the humans' control. So, in conclusion, the main reason why humans settled was not a choice that they suddenly made overnight. Indeed, it seems to have been a gradual affair, starting with the warming of the earth, negating the need to escape the cold. This was followed by the spread of specific cultures that would bring human tribes together for religious ceremonies. These ceremonies relied heavily on alcohol, which was a bit of a pain to gather the ingredients for. This prompted some people to start producing their own ingredients in a concentrated area. This in turn led to people staying in one place to look after these new fields. Eventually, they were making so much food that they were able to justify taming larger animals, thus negating the need to go out hunting. We could therefore say that humans simply settled so they could make more alcohol, which in turn led to people settling down so they could continue to look after their crops. Suddenly, they were not able to actually move away from their fields, meaning they had to farm more food, which eventually resulted in them abandoning their previous nomadic life altogether. So what do I think? Well, I find it oddly human that one of the main reasons why we abandoned our nomadic lifestyle was so that we had more opportunities to get absolutely wasted. As it took so long to actually assemble the necessary ingredients, people began looking for easier ways to gather them, which of course meant making them yourself. I also find the image of a very annoyed nomadic farmer chasing off cattle that were eating his crops, and then realizing, wait, I could just store these animals in another field and feed them myself, thus that means I don't have to go out and hunt anymore, hysterical. But those are just my thoughts. What do you think? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you for watching and listening to our videos. Be sure to like, comment and subscribe if you've enjoyed. All sources are listed and linked in the description below. I've been the Ancient History Guy, and as always, I'll be seeing you later.